So everyone's been doing their COD tier lists on Twitter, and as much as I bash AAA gaming and Call of Duty nowadays, I really can't deny that this series is a big part of what got me into video games. I remember when I was a sophomore in high school, I would play COD 3 on the 360, and that was my first real online gaming experience. And then there was that one fateful week in junior year of high school where I had the flu and picked up a copy of COD 4 and spent the whole week just running through it. Then I have countless memories in MW3 with the face-off playlists, and then Black Ops 2 making trolling videos. That's how this channel started. I used to make COD trolling videos, in case you were wondering where all those inactive subs came from. But with the tier list trend, I figured why not throw my hat into the ring, so fuck it, here's my COD tier list. And also, since I don't have access to all these games anymore for getting gameplay, you're gonna have to deal with Teenage Joe's COD videos in the background for some of these. So let's go. Ghosts. Last couple years, I've noticed a whole bunch of COD Ghosts apologists on the internet saying it was underrated and actually really good. Well, I'm not one of them. I found Ghosts to be an extremely underwhelming and boring game to play. The gunplay was tight and the game itself was smooth, but that's to be expected from COD games at this point. The map design was horrible and the colors were bland and uninteresting. The sound design was flat and repetitive, and the game just didn't stick with me in any way. It seemed Infinity Ward was trying to get original with a concept that they'd already done to death, and it just didn't work with me. Advanced Warfare. I think Advanced Warfare was just kind of ruined for me because I played Titanfall first. I don't think Advanced Warfare is a bad game, but I don't think it's very good either. I do appreciate that it was self-aware and it wasn't trying to be serious, and I actually really liked the outlandishness of it and just how absurd the game was. But if you played the first Titanfall before you played Advanced Warfare, you'd probably agree with me when I say that it kind of ruined it. Titanfall was basically just Advanced Warfare, but more refined and with better map design and game modes. Fuck, I missed Titanfall 1. Black Ops 4. Black Ops 4 actually had a ton of potential, and I hate how hard it squandered it. But that being said, I still put way more time into Black Ops 4 than I did either of the games in D tier. The increased time to kill and changes to health really got me interested in the game again, and I think that's what the series needed to bring me back. Where it fell apart was pretty much everything else. The game was horribly optimized on both consoles and PC, and the map design was extremely underwhelming for the original maps, not the remakes. There wasn't very much to do, the gun balance was horrible, and the specialists just ruined the flow of the game with cheap, unavoidable insta-kill shit. I honestly found it pretty funny that Activision and Treyarch had put so much emphasis during the marketing on the competitive nature of BO4 and saying it was going to be insanely competitive and super skill-based, when in reality it was probably the least skill-based game in the series in years. I think Black Ops 4 was just a couple patches away from being really great, but at this point I think everyone knows that Treyarch didn't give a shit about supporting the multiplayer. They just wanted to keep Blackout going, and the multiplayer is still a mess, but again, despite all its flaws, there was something about the actual gunplay and the combat system that kept me playing for longer than Advanced Warfare and Ghosts. World War II. World War II was one of the weirdest COD games I've ever played because of how inconsistent it was. Everyone knows at this point that the game launched completely broken, with a ton of crippling flaws in the game design that took way too long to patch out. However, once the patches did come, the game got significantly better, and it's a pretty solid COD game right now. But, unlike a lot of people, I don't think the end product was really all that special. The map design is very basic and repetitive, the spawns are horrible, and the LMGs are blatantly overpowered. When compared to the last boots on the ground game, which was Ghosts at the time, a lot of improvements were made, but as for the people saying World War II is a top 5 COD game now, I'm honestly not sure where you're getting that. Black Ops 3. Whereas Titanfall 1 ruined Advanced Warfare for me, Black Ops 3 kinda ruined Titanfall 1 for me.
Boy.
Black Ops 3 was just a fun sci-fi FPS. It took what was good about Black Ops 2 in terms of the gunplay and just added wall running and thrust jumping in a way that I felt was pretty natural. It wasn't clunky and excessive like Advanced Warfare, it was much more controlled and warranted like Titanfall. Black Ops 3 basically played like Titanfall, but on smaller maps and without the Titans, and I loved it for that. Now, the microtransactions were a different story. Fuck this game's microtransactions and the trends they helped popularize. Honestly, those were what eventually pushed me away from the game altogether, because I felt that I was constantly being shown MTs and DLC weapons and emotes and shit that I couldn't have, and since everything was RNG, there was no way I could just grind for them. But before the DLC weapons were added, I loved this game, and it's just another example of an Activision game that was ruined by greed. Modern Warfare 2. Yeah, you dislike this video. Do it. This game isn't very good. It's definitely fun, but it's not very good. Can you honestly tell me with a straight face that Modern Warfare 2 is a well-designed game? No, it's awful, but that's what the charm was. The game was so bad and so busted with so many blatant disregards for game design that it was just fun as hell to play. Now, maybe I just don't look as fondly upon Modern Warfare 2 as other people do, since I didn't play the game in its prime. I played MW2 for the first time around 2011 or so, and I think a lot of the love people have for MW2 comes from the fact that it was a brand new kind of game at the time, with this over-the-top, explosion-filled military game with kill streaks and all that. But as for someone who didn't experience the initial hype, I just don't really see MW2 as anything more than just a fun, over-the-top FPS game. But, all that being said, Modern Warfare 3. To me, Modern Warfare 3 played like MW2 minus all the broken things and with way more stuff to do. Admittedly, the map design wasn't as good in MW3, but the maps were still pretty solid for the most part. Sure, the colors were a lot more bland, but the game also felt a lot more consistent and less cheap. Sound design was great, and in terms of visuals, honestly, this game still looks pretty good today. I love the introduction of the specialist streak system. I like the idea of support streaks, even if they were pretty easily exploitable. And most of all, I liked that this game felt more like a game, rather than a bunch of strung together FPS ideas, like Modern Warfare 2 kinda was. Maybe I'm biased towards MW3 since I have so many memories of playing face-off matches with my buddy, or because I didn't experience MW2 in its prime, but looking back on the two games today, I just find MW3 to be the superior in terms of game design, content, and the overall fun factor. Infinite Warfare. Fuck you, I liked it. A little background on me, I grew up playing very vertical shooters like Halo and Unreal, and I also have always had a love for fighting games, games that require a ton of inputs and punish you hard for making mistakes. And there was something about Infinite Warfare that kind of tapped into both of those aspects for me, and I genuinely really enjoyed it. The movement was just copy-pasted from Black Ops 3, but a bit faster. And the time to kill was extremely fast at launch, but it was quickly patched up, and now it actually has one of the longer time to kills in Call of Duty. The claustrophobic map design, mixed with the abundance of movement options and character abilities, made me fall in love with it. I will say this though. The weapon balance sucked. There were basically only 3 viable weapons, and while this did get better as more guns were added to the game over time to balance things out, there really is no reason why the gun balance should have taken so long to iron out. But this doesn't change the fact that the game honestly is really solid, and it bugs the shit out of me that so many people bashed it because this is the internet and that was the trendy thing to do at the time. It's definitely not a traditional Call of Duty game, so if you're looking for one of those, stay away from it, but whereas Black Ops 3 kinda just felt like Black Ops 2 with jetpacks, Infinite Warfare felt more like its own thing entirely. The movement was fast and fluid, the gunplay was great, the hit detection was arguably the best in the entire franchise, and while the map design wasn't exactly unique, it complemented the mechanics rather well. In conclusion, fuck you, I liked it. Black Ops 1. Now, I will go on record saying that Black Ops 1 has the best map design of any Call of Duty game. However, I will also go on record saying that Black Ops 1 has the worst gun balance of any Call of Duty game. The multiplayer was dominated by a handful of guns, and about half of the weapon sandbox was just unviable. But all that being said, I love this game. The sound design, the art style, the excellent map design, the kill streaks, it's just such a fun game. This is another one of those COD games that was just a patch or two away from being perfect, and while those patches unfortunately never came, the game in its current state is still pretty damn good. Looking back, I would have loved to see wager matches make a comeback in modern COD games, or that thing that Black Ops 1 did where the larger maps would be cut in half during party games to keep the pace up, but, a man can dream. World at War. The amount of COD tier lists I've seen with World at War in the bottom half has left me frustrated beyond words. This game is excellent. Sure, it's basically just a reskin of COD 4. Sure, it didn't do very much original, but when you're just giving a paint job to a game as good as COD 4, and it was a pretty damn good paint job as well, mind you, the end result is still going to be really good. World at War is one of my favorite World War II games of all time, and the fact that it's basically unplayable now is so upsetting, because otherwise I would still be playing it. The sound design is great, the soundtrack is haunting, the map design is awesome, and it reminds me of COD 2 and 3, and the simplicity of the 3-5-7 killstreak system was great. Of all the older COD games, World at War is the one that I would most like to see get remastered, but given what Activision did to COD World War II a couple years ago, I seriously doubt they're even going to acknowledge World at War's existence anymore. But now that I'm done sucking this game's dick, COD 4. Ah, the big one. The big, juicy one. Call of Duty 4 was not my first Call of Duty game. I think it was my third or fourth, but it was the first one that I really fell in love with. I'd never been into, air quotes, realistic shooters before COD 4. I was mainly interested in games like Halo and Gears of War, but COD 3 had piqued my interest at one point, so I gave COD 4 a try one week while I was sick with the flu, and I loved it. The map design, the weapons, the simplicity, and the twitchiness that really appealed to my paranoia. It all came together in a way that I fell in love with. I mentioned earlier in this video that MW2 kind of gets brownie points from people because of that first-timers bias, but honestly I think COD 4 took all of mine. I know there's problems with it, like the M16 and Frag Times 3, but when compared to the problems of other COD games, COD 4 really doesn't have that many in terms of game design. It's just a great shooter, and it paved the way for the rest of the series, and also for Activision to destroy it a few years later. Black Ops 2. All around, I think this is just the best Call of Duty game to be released, and I will take that to my grave because, mark my words, there will never be a better one. Black Ops 2 had just about everything I would want in a COD game, and most of the things I want in a multiplayer FPS in general. It had solid map design, great weapon balance, solid hit detection, really good customization for the time, an abundance of content and game modes, and while they butchered Demolition, I'm willing to forgive that for the sake of everything else it did right. My only real gripe with Black Ops 2 is the sound design and how lackluster it is compared to pretty much every other game in the series. I mean, almost every single gun reuses the exact same magazine sound when reloading. But aside from sound design, this game is pretty much what a Call of Duty game should be. Do I think it'll ever be passed? Not really. I've kind of lost faith in Activision to make a good game with such a massive brand attached to it. So that's my tier list. I'm sure it'll rustle some jimmies, but that's what I'm all about. Honestly, I hate seeing how far Call of Duty has fallen because of how much it helped me get into gaming in the first place, but if that's what has to happen, so be it. If COD has to go down as an example of what happens when greed takes over gameplay, I can live with that. But anyways, that's all from me today. Thanks for sticking through it. I'll be back tomorrow with a video on my thoughts on Avengers Endgame. I'm seeing that in a couple hours. And then we'll be back to response videos on Saturday. Gotta be going back to the world of Xbox fanboys, and it's gonna be horrible.